We have the
All
greatest
right.
conversations, the best, the
I
very best.
know.
Anyway,
Well, and then I don't hit record, and then it's like, crap, 45 minutes later, we should have been recording this.
dead serious. I mean, for this is probably our regular conversations that they should have been like the greatest podcasts, and then like, nobody knows but us.
All right, welcome to the Train Smart podcast with Velox Training Group. I am the lead host and lead instructor of Velox Training Group. Today, we've got someone who I am super duper excited about because I've trained with this guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's someone that I trust to talk about training, which is why I dig training with him. We got Fabio from My Own Defender.
Hey, yo, good to be here. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, man. Fabio, tell everyone about My Own Defender. What is My Own Defender all
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, I mean, I used to have this long story when I first started because, my dad was in the army, legit. Like, my dad was in the army for like 35 years, something like that, in Italy, of all
Yep.
places, right? So I grew up kind of around guns and I liked them, but like anybody else, like any other boy, right? You're like in your mid-teens and you get to go shoot a gun. It's kind of fun, whatever. But it wasn't anything at all serious. And then I'll fast forward a whole bunch. So I would tell the story about how I grew up around guns, and then I shot as a kid, and then I got more interested. But the truth is, I have two daughters.
Hmm.
So I got married to my lovely unicorn wife, Jess, about 12 years ago. And as soon as I got married, I was like, I feel more responsible than just for me. And I've always been like, don't you bully people? Because that really like pisses me off. Like caring for people, I'm that kind of person. When I got married to her, I was like, oh, shoot, okay, I need to do some stuff. So I went and got my like empty hand skills figured out. Like I got my black and Krav Maga. I roll BJJ now. Like all that stuff is important to me. Like being a little bit
So,
more able with.
so you could like rip someone's throat out, essentially. Is that what that
Yeah,
black
just
belt
like
in
in the
Krav
movies,
Maga
like
means?
hiya. So I was like, okay, so I need to be more able. I was kind of fit, but I was like, nah, I need to be significantly more capable with my hands. So I started doing that, and then I started doing some protection work, some shooting, but it was like super basic. And then I had my daughters. One of them is 10 now, unreal, and the other one's 8. And man, I'm telling you, now I have my wife, I have my daughters, and I'm like, all right, so I'm capable, I'm able to do some stuff, but I'm not a huge dude. Like I'm not a linebacker dude. And when I started doing protection work, pretty much at that time, like 10 years ago, man, if you weren't a linebacker, you weren't getting looked at very good. Like people wanted like almost like a bodyguard instead of like an executive protection person. Like they wanted to be more overt, and sometimes they still do. So anyway, I was like, I need a force multiplier. I need to be able to do something in case like it's something I can't handle with just my hands and whatever. So I got somewhat serious with like training. I started taking classes, and like everybody else, I started taking like those defensive pistol classes and rifle classes, and I'm
Been
like,
there.
yeah. And we were scanning and assessing and
Been
Sewell,
there.
and I didn't ever do the route of like wearing all the kit and stuff. I'm not that cool, I guess,
I've
but
been there.
I guess I'm not that cool. Um, but I did a lot of the, you know, let's force on force with, the CO2 guns and the ammunition guns, which
Hmm.
I think is still valuable. But we
Sure.
were doing a whole lot of like static range, like after you're done shooting, you take a step, get off the X, like search behind you, like all the whatever. So anyway, within a year or two of that, like what I realized is that I'm like, why am I the best shooter in all of these classes? Most of them, right? And then I'd go to some of these classes and be like, I'm better than the instructor. Like, it's too soon. Like, how do I go to the top of the game so fast, right? That's what I felt like. And so I went down that rabbit hole of like, there's got to be better shooters, and, opened up YouTube, and I found competition shooting about 5 years ago or something like that. And I was like, oh, what those dudes can do, I cannot do. Not right now. And
Hmm.
so I went to my first competition about 5 years ago. So my own defender started like very, very defensive minded with, I want to protect my family, I want to protect myself, I want to be able to have some skills outside of just like my empty hand skills, which I think most people leave behind anyway. They don't have any empty hand skills, and I think that's a problem. But anyway, moving on.
I
So
agree.
that's when I started my own defender. It was truly
Hmm.
for like moms and dads, people that are like busy, they can't sort through the volumes of information out there as far as like defensive stuff. And so I was like, I'll start a place where I can sort through the information because I'm gonna do this. I'm serious about this. I'm already doing protection for people. Um, I have some empty hand skills. I have pretty decent gun skills. Back then, I was pretty decent. And so then I started my own defender because of that. I was trying to equip people that don't have the time to sort it out with just like, here's what you really need to know. And these are the things you want to practice and pay attention to. And that like exponentially evolved when I started tapping into like performance shooting, where it was like, oh, like time is a real thing in this, accuracy as speed is a real thing in this. And then we started seeing all the videos and iOSs and all that stuff, OISs, sorry. And I was like, oh, like you're going to shoot very aggressively when it matters. And so
Yes.
this like slow press, like the surprise break ain't going to happen, all that stuff. Like there were some things that I was thankful, like I didn't ever really learn to like pin the trigger. Although I heard people talking, I was like, nah, there's no way that's good, right? So I was lucky that I didn't do that, but I did a lot of other bad things, and it took me a while to get over them. But
Dude,
so good.
what's interesting about like like exactly what you're saying there is like the all of the defensive classes for the most part that I've ever taken, like that's the shooting piece of it, right? Whether you're like rolling around on the ground or something like that, it's always like, hey, slow trigger press, or like, hey, we're gonna put a piece of brass on your front sight post and you're
Oh,
going to press the trigger and
I
make
was
sure it
made to
doesn't
do
fall
that
off.
for
And it's
sure.
like, man, like looking back, it's like as a defensive shooting class, like we're doing the one thing that, should be fast, super freaking slow in this class.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, sure, we're rolling around on the ground and it feels super cool and stuff, but it's like the shooting piece of it is actually the opposite of how we should be training for an actual engagement.
And it used to be like a real argument. It's like, wow, you don't know where I've been, and you don't know my background, and so like, when I used to do X, Y, and Z, and I had this acronym by my name, like, we did these things, and like I know a lot more about that stuff and those people now. So
Mhm.
I'm like, all right, unimpressed. Let's get to work. But now with all the video evidence, it's like it's not really no conversation anymore. It's like nobody slow presses and resets the trigger when it matters. I mean,
Nope.
I'm still waiting for that video. I say it in class all the time. Like, if you think that's what you're gonna do when you're defending yourself, send me that video that you see somewhere on the internet. Now, if you're offensive, like you're like one of those units or whatever, and you have like time and you can set up and you have cover and you're on the offense. Can you take your time with your trigger press? I mean, for sure. If you got the distance and the cover and it's a surprise. But like from like a civilian standpoint, we're mostly going to be like on the defensive. Like you're not going to have time for that, and you need to be able to manage your pistol, your rifle, whatever. Like the point of training is that you can manage it at speed. I mean, though,
Yes.
that's like the second name for my own defender is like accuracy of speed. If we're not doing that, what are we doing anyway? Like, you're gonna roll around and get your heart rate up. I'm like, go to the gym for that. I mean, I go roll and get choked out from time to time, and I get punched in the face, and my heart rate goes up. Like I don't need to do that on the range. When I want to be shooting and figuring out how to make my platform work at speed. I don't know. It's so I get passionate about those conversations because there's still quite a bit. In fact, just yesterday I got a direct message from somebody that was like, "Hey, how good is your rifle class?" And I was like, "You're asking the instructor like how good my class is. If I didn't
Yeah.
100% believe in my class was badass, I wouldn't teach it, bro. Like what are you talking?"
Yeah.
And this was somebody that came to a pistol class and was like, "Wow, you blew my mind. It was so good." Like, for months after that. Now it's like 6 months later and he's thinking about coming to the rifle class. I'm like, what were you looking for as an answer? And he was like, well, is it like more like a competition class? And now I'm starting to sort through the information, right? Is it a competition class? Is it where this is going, right?
Yeah.
Is it a
Yeah.
defensive class? I'm like, bruh, it's a shooting class.
Yes.
Period.
Yep.
Delete. Block. No, I'm just kidding. No, he's gonna be cool. He's gonna come. But it was like, what are we talking about? What is a defensive class? Nick, what is a defensive class to you?
I, I honestly uh, think that like anything shooting wise, anything like if I go to if I go to a Krav Maga class, that's a defensive class. If I go to a performance pistol class, that's also a defensive class because I'm working on skills that I would need to use in a defensive situation. So it's like I honestly don't understand. Like I've heard that same exact comment actually pretty recently about one of my classes. It was like, oh, this kind of USPSA class, and it's like, yeah, not because if it was like a USPSA class, like I'd have like stages, and we'd be like talking about
Yeah, no.
stage plans. Like none of this shit is like actually. I mean, sure, you could use it in USPSA, but like this is just the shooting piece, right? You apply it to your context however you see fit. It has
Yeah.
nothing really to do with, oh, this is just USPSA.
Yeah, I don't understand those conversations. For me, it's like, are you capable? Are you able to shoot aggressively and still be accurate? Because that's what it looks like when it matters in competition. That's what it looks like when it matters in like self-defense, because that's what we have video evidence of. I don't know anybody I haven't seen any of these videos where people are just like, I'm gonna take my time on this trigger press and I'm
Hmm.
5 yards away from the guy that's trying to hurt me. Like that doesn't exist. We watch people like smashing on the trigger as hard as they can, not because they want to, because they're emotionally shooting
Yeah.
because they're scared. I get it. I am very thankful with all of protection stuff I've done. I have never been like in a gunfight. Thank God. I hope to never find out. Like I will be very clear that's not my lane. Like I can't speak to that. But I mean, I've seen all the violence. You know how it is in our space, right? You're in the space, so now as soon as a piece of violence happens, like it's in the DMs, and there's 30 DMs about the same, OIS or like some civilian that does something or whatever. So I'm watching this volume of and trust me, when I was teaching like the craft stuff, man, people wanted to know about what would you do for this? What would you do for that? Man, like it's like every can of worm, you know? Anyway, so the, if we have that and it's how people are truly reacting and it's now very clear, like why won't I train in a manner that requires me to maintain the gun at speed? Like I need to be able to make this thing behave the way I want to, like out to 15, 20 yards, so that when I need it at 5 yards, it's no big deal at all. Like I'm
Yeah.
totally cheating, you know what I mean? Um, so I don't understand the argument anymore, other than, well, sir, you can't do that. And so you
Yeah.
have these excuses because you can't do that, can't teach that, can't perform this. Now you're going to call it a game, or you're going to call it something that, whatever, gives you an excuse not to train, gives you an excuse to continue your curriculum from 30 years ago, 20 years ago, from your days of whatever. Like that's your excuse. Okay. I mean, then let's say what it is. Like you have this curriculum, you had this previous life that you did something cool. Thank you for your service. I'm not at all being funny about that. It's like great, but that doesn't mean you're the most like current and able to teach people how to shoot better. And we need people to just shoot better.
Hmm.
And
I
so,
agree. It's dude, to me it's very similar to any type of sport, right? I'll give you so like when I was in high school, I wrestled. Um,
my man,
and figuring out like being good at very specific wrestling techniques. So I wrestled 142 pounds weight class, I think. Just being 142 pounds, not a huge guy, but like knowing these techniques, bro. If you didn't know these techniques, you could be 300 pounds and I was going to demolish you, right?
100%. Yep.
And that to me, it's very similar to like the shooting piece. It's like if you don't know, if you can't shoot as well as me, I mean, Godspeed, man. Like it's probably not going to go well for you. I mean, unless you just get lucky. And to me, it was like the same exact thing as wrestling. Like I fully understand these techniques. I'm going to be faster than you. And since I have a good understanding of this makes me, a whole lot more dangerous than you. I
Yeah.
think a lot of this stuff is very similar. Therefore, it's like it's not a quote unquote defensive only class. Like, no, this is just shooting skills.
And the argument sometimes that I get, and honestly, I'll just say what I think, but I don't have data on this because again, I've not been in those things. But it's like, yeah, you're going to be nervous. Yep. You're gonna be scared. Yep. I agree with all of those things, and I feel like you're right. And I have been Pause for a second. I've been a professional trumpet player for 30 years, right? And I've played some of the biggest stages on planet Earth with like some of the best artists, people that I was like, if I could just play with these artists and I could just die and be okay, like legit, that
Yeah.
cool. And it's terrifying because everybody knows, especially the kind of trumpet playing I was doing. I was playing lead trumpet, which is like all the high notes, and like it's very exposed. It's like you take your pants off on stage, and there's tens of thousands of people just watching, and they know when you're gonna screw up the note from the thing that everybody knows the song, like right. So I have been in those like very very scary situations. Now, certainly. Nobody's killing me. Nobody's trying to kill me, but it would kill my career, and I have
Yeah.
to feed my family. So there's definitely some anxiety, some stress, or whatever, and you still need to be able to perform. So how do you do that? I mean, you continuously practice in those kind of environments. You continue to play in those kind of environments. And so for me, when people are like, well, you don't know, you're going to be scared and you're going to be anxious. I'm like, I don't know. I'll tell you this. Nobody's ever shot me, but I have been punched and I have been choked and I have been hurt on a mat quite a bit by dudes that are trying to prove a point because I'm smaller and they're supposed to beat me and blah, 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 blah. And somehow I managed to be just fine. You know, I've delivered on some big dudes, and I'm not that big. Like I'm 5'10", 180, and some big dudes trying to prove a point. You know, those white belts that come on the mat and they're like, you don't know, I'm 250 pounds. I'm gonna crush you. I'm like, that's fine. And they're like sucking on their own like vomit because they just got teeped in the stomach and they got front kicked in the stomach. They're like, oh, whatever. So yes, technique under some pressure is going to be important. And that's why I like the competition stuff. It's pretty dang stressful if you ask me. I mean, I got names on the jersey that I'm representing, and there's camera crews. They are like trying to record stuff. And like, I have friends that I don't want to disappoint. I have a family that I leave to go do these matches that I don't want to disappoint. And then maybe it's personal pressure that I put on myself. Like the companies are like me for me, and my family likes me for me. But I must say, there's some pretty dang high pressure moments when I'm trying to do something at the very highest level of anybody that does this with a pistol or a rifle or whatever. So, like, yeah, you're right. Nobody ever's ever shot me. But also, like, if I'm at 5 yards from a target and I have to draw very aggressively, I am not likely to like pick out my gun and miss the target and drop my magazine because my
Hmm.
grip sucks. And because we're seeing that in video evidence of
For sure.
people that aren't used to drawing at full speed because they're like, I have to get a perfect purchase of my gun and I have to get my master grip in the holster. It's like, okay. But then when you need it, you're not going to have that. You need to be able to practice drawing very aggressively and getting the gun on target very aggressively. So maybe there is something to training at full speed and embracing the tension and pressure that comes with that and sucking sometimes and getting better because you might. So if you fall from your best performance a little bit, you'll still be pretty dang good as opposed to like practicing at the very lowest level possible so you don't make mistakes. And then you totally make mistakes when you add pressure and
Dude,
tension.
I think people totally miss the part that like competition is stress inoculation, right? And like you
Yeah.
could say all day like, well, you know where the targets are and this and that. It's like, yeah, you could say that, but until you actually go shoot a match with people standing behind you watching you,
Yep.
and like you have to remember where everything is, you have to remember a stage plan, where you're going to run to, what is the order that you're going to shoot all these in, where you're going to stick your reload. Like, dude, I don't want to hear it. Especially like as an instructor, knowing damn well and good people are going to log on to practice score and look up your shit after you go shoot a match,
Bro,
right? Like
I didn't know
it
people used to do that, but you showed me that. I'm like, what is up with people?
I know. I don't have time to look people up on
Seriously,
practice
I
score,
don't.
but
Oh, good. Yes.
like knowing that people are going to do that, dude, it adds a level of stress.
Yeah, for sure. Oh,
So
no doubt.
I think competition damn sure has a solid place.
But
And
and even like in some of my all of my classes, 100. In fact, not some. 100% of my classes, you will shoot by yourself in front of people. There will be some social
mhm.
pressure. There will be some time pressure. If you cannot do it in front of people, you cannot do it. I see this in front. I say this every class. I put myself in those shoes too. Like, man, I'm a demo today. I don't care how much I traveled. I don't care if I like my ammo. I don't care if my gun
Mhm.
is working properly. I don't care if I got enough sleep. Like, none of that matters. I am going to do what I can do today in front of people. and there will be some pressure, and those people paid to be there. Like that's pressure. Like I have to feed my family, right? Like it's important that I do as good as I possibly can do. So even if you don't compete, even when you go to a class, and I think classes should be structured this way, where at some point you experience like I have to be able to do this in front of people.
Yep.
I think that's a good point. It's a good starting point of like, okay, so it's not just me on my happy sunny day at the range by myself when I have all the time in the world. It's like, no, there's gonna be a beep and you're gonna have to do it, and we're gonna know your data based on the time on the damn thing and the points on the target, and everybody's gonna know what you're able to do today. That doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you a good person. It's just what you got right now. And if that makes you anxious, that's good. Like that's how you should be trained.
1000%.
Like when I go train, I put that pressure on myself. I'm like, okay, I'm visualizing what I'm about to do. I want to do it really well the first time. And when I don't do it well the first time, I'm not happy about it.
Yeah.
I don't go like, oh, that's okay. I'll just do it 10 more times so it's good. And I'm like, no, I'm like flogging myself. Like, why didn't you grip the gun the way you're supposed to? Why didn't you pick a spot? All the stuff that I know that I can apply better. And it's like a forever thing. That's the kind of training I'm doing for myself. It's not leisurely. Like I don't just go over there and be like, oh, I've got all this, I have all these sponsors. It's really cool. They send me stuff and it's just easy. Like people think that, oh, well, you get ammo and you get guns and you get whatever and you get support and yeah. But also, like I don't take any of that for granted, and I 100% work my ace off to make sure that I represent them well and I don't waste any opportunities. Like I'm trying to just get better, increase and perform at a higher level every time I'm at the
Well,
range. So the pressure is real. Like if you think I just go and I hang out and fart around at the range, like you are so mistaken. So
yeah.
mistaken.
Well, dude, like all of these support is almost needed, right? Like I've had years where I didn't have any sort of ammo sponsor. Like I remember going to Walmart once a week back when you could go to Walmart and get 9 mil for like $168 for a
Wow.
grand.
That was
And
before
like
me, bro.
and
I
like
wasn't
I
even
can
shooting that.
remember, dude, I can remember like getting all of the 9 mil. They're like, "Hey, what do you
So
want
cool.
out of the case?" I'm like, "I'll take all of that aluminum cased freaking 9 mil because it's
Just
cheap."
open it and put it in the cart.
And
Yeah.
dude, I can remember the 1 year shooting over 100K, and it's like that's no ammo sponsor, no nothing, right? And
Wow.
that was just me freaking like, "Hey, I am just trying to get better."
Yeah.
So
You've done the
like
investment for sure.
I have put into work and like I'll say it, like I feel like I deserve to be in the situation that I'm in because I have done the work to be here. So like
100%. And
I don't feel bad about, you know, companies supporting me.
well,
I very much appreciate it, obviously.
and there's more than that. Like, so for example, last November, October, something like that, I started doing some math. It's just basic, like ballpark stuff. And we've talked about this. I was probably around like 90,000 rounds, like lifetime. Like every round that I could think of, like when I was a kid, I would go, okay, when I was a kid, maybe I'd go shoot 50 rounds or whatever, and never serious about training, and I'd shoot like a few thousand rounds a year, And then
Mhm.
before I like opened a company to train, I was like maybe shooting 8,000 rounds, 10,000 rounds a year, which for me that was a lot of rounds. It's
Sure.
like a financial investment. And so it was
Absolutely.
probably right around like 90, like in
Mhm.
last November. And then this year I'm shooting 40 and next year I'm shooting 50. Like that's a decision, financial, blah, 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 sponsors, the help I can get, the support I can get. But that only puts me at about 130 so far, something like that. I'm just
Mhm.
ballpark, maybe give and take a few thousand here and there. So how did we get here? Bro, like this room, the room you see here, like it's just me. No, nobody knows. No, it's like thankless work. I'm over here like sweating my butt off, like swinging kettlebells, rice bucket exercises, like mounting rifles and drawing pistols and transitions for days and like all sorts of crazy amounts of hours of dry fire so that I can earn the right to shoot my ammo. Like people, so when these people start opening their mouth about like, well, you have all this, it's easy for you. No, nothing's easy, man. Like if you want
No.
to be good, it ain't gonna be easy. You do have to do the work, and it's not just pew pew. Like there will be a point in your development where you just have to shoot more. That's where I'm at. Like I'm not cutting off the dry fire. I'm not even diminishing the dry fire. I just go to the range more often and I shoot more rounds more frequently. So instead of going once or twice a week, I'm going 45 times a week when I'm not teaching and out of town. Like this week, we'll have gone 4 times, and I taught last weekend, and I'm teaching this weekend. That's a commitment to shoot
Sure.
more rounds more frequently so that I can watch the gun go off and go, okay, these inputs do this to me, these inputs that are missing, or these inputs that are too much do this other thing to me. And so I need to get used to how to make this behave differently, blah, 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 blah. So dry fire, this room, get you one. Like, I don't care if it's your bedroom, but if you're not putting in the hours and you're just like, it's easy for you, you don't get to say that. It's not easy. You'll
No.
know when you start dry firing.
Well, that's a really good segue into a good question, I feel like, for you. So, what are some things that you've been working on in your training specifically? Maybe it's live fire, maybe it's dry fire, but like when you say when you go to the range, what are
Yeah.
some things that you're like, all right, today I am working on this one, or maybe you do 10 things that you try to focus on.
Yeah.
Like what's some stuff that you think about when you go live fire?
Yeah. And
Because
so,
obviously you have a plan, right? You don't just show up and you're like, I'm
no,
just gonna
sir.
bang. Yeah.
No. And you probably know because most of the time, I'm like, hey, Nick, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. Like whatever, like every other day, like, hey, what are you doing at the range?
Yep.
Like accountability, right? Like I have to have that. Anyway, so I mean, that's what I'm working on is a bunch of transition stuff and how to make the gun behave in a way that I really like and is repeatable, right? So both of
Mhm.
those things are high on the priority list. Now, there have been times when I worked on movement for a long time, like because that was a low hanging fruit. Like I'm moving so bad, I'm entering
Yeah.
so bad, I'm exiting so bad, like that kind of thing. Or drawing back in the day, like getting the gun, like because draw supports the grip, and if your draw is bad, your grip sucks, and what's the point? Like nothing. So now these days, like I mean, this week is like I've been mounting the rifle a lot in dry fire and live fire, and
Hmm.
I'm just trying to make the thing. I'm trying to dial in what inputs make the gun behave the same over and over again. Granted, the gun doesn't recoil a whole bunch, but at the distances that I'm shooting at, like 25, 30 yards, like I've been hanging out a lot there. It looks like the gun moves more than it does, right? So you're likely to do more than you need to, and so like that's what I've been dialing in on the rifle. It's like I need to do less and let the gun just mount it properly and keep it the same. So like a lot of mounts lately, for sure, just to get that predictability of the gun behaving the same. You had to
I,
think like you're gonna say something.
dude, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong with the rifle. And you see it like this is a very, very common theme, at least what I see in my classes, especially when we start doing transitions
Yep.
specifically with the rifle,
Yep.
right? People will do something like maybe they mount the gun properly on the first target, and as soon as they go to transition, the mount comes off,
Oh yeah.
right? And then maybe they do something like the mount comes off, and then they look at the target, shoot it once, right? And the gun is like doing something completely different than what it did on the first target because they're no longer, having a consistent mount. And then they start doing things like pulling back on the gun or
Yeah.
trying to
Steering the
fight
gun.
it or trying to steer the gun around,
Yep.
things like that.
Yep.
So I think going to the range, setting up, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 targets just for transitions with the rifle
Yep.
and just focusing on keeping that mount like consistent throughout the entire string is a very good thing for people to do.
Oh, for sure. And I know you know this because I was telling you just yesterday, but so I put a laser on the front of the gun, not because I'm a cool guy, not because I'm gonna use nods. It's like strictly for teaching purposes.
No, no.
'Cause I
Next
kind
time
of
you're here, you're using nods. We're gonna kill some stuff.
I'm not that cool, man. So I put it on there because I feel like it would be a good teaching tool for people to see like how much movement of the gun there actually is while I'm shooting or while
Mhm.
I'm transitioning or how the gun arrives on a target or whatever, right? What I'm finding is that it's super distracting. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's like the dot you're trying not to stare at, except now it's on the target where if you're good at this or pretty good at this, I tend to think that I'm pretty good at this. Like I'm actually looking at the target, but now I have a thing on the target. So I've learned to kind of discount or not pay attention to so much the thing that's 2 feet from my face, right? The color that's there. Like
Yep.
I'm learning to make that like I'm aware of it, but I'm not gonna look at it very much because I want to stay out there connected to the targets. But now I have a laser on the target. So it was like a new world like this whole week of like, how do I because I want to be able to demonstrate how my gun behaves. But if I stare at that thing, the gun is going to behave really, really poorly. So like that's been the balance. Like what am I currently training on? That's the struggle these days. Like how do I help people by showing them these behaviors of the gun without making the gun behave worse because I'm using this new tool. So like that's been the balance. It's almost been like an investment in the teaching side of this instead of like necessarily my development of this. Because I mean, I feel like I can slay pretty good out to 50 yards on a rifle and feel very, very good about that at pace. So like how do I demo that so that they can see it but not mess up my performance? So kind of, again, you're talking about what am I training on this week? There was a lot of that going on. A bunch of transitions here in the room too. With this rifle and the laser on, I actually did a couple of videos where I was showing people like how to like pause the gun on certain spots of the target because people like to slide in and out of targets and call it transitions. But like if you actually have a laser, you can see like they're like vomiting across multiple targets. It's like projectile vomit.
They just try to like time it. They're like, no, I definitely got it. It's like, no, you just shot like two Charlies,
and I'm like,
one on either side of the alpha.
Just because you see a color coming across where you want to shoot doesn't mean you're going to like. The problem is sometimes you'll get lucky on a few shots and you think that that's the because it's fast, right? Like you never stop the gun, but also completely inconsistent. And God forbid you have any tension because you're doing it under time pressure and people are watching. Like there's no way you're going to get good points. Like so, actually pausing the gun on the spot that you're looking at. The pause doesn't have to be any longer than however many shots you're taking, right? Like as soon as the last shot breaks, you move, whatever. But there is a pause of the gun on the spot. You can't slide in, especially if you've got partials and whatnot. People are like, they think they're going to slide in across like a notion. I'm like, you out of your mind. So anyway, so even on the rifle, that's this week I was doing a lot of like transitions in the room, transitions at the range, even like simple exercises like moving left to right with the rifle as a right-handed shooter doesn't feel all that bad, but moving right to left, it can feel pretty bad, especially if you got visual barriers you're trying to go around and stuff. Like
shooting across your body.
Get you some of those transitions, like when you're trying to go right to left and your gun is mounted on the right and you've got like a stack of barrels and you're trying to shoot behind those barrels, like it makes you really want to switch mount to the other shoulder. Like, and who knows, maybe eventually if I get into like more of this PCSL stuff, I might need to get on some of those leans, like shoot on the other shoulder. But until then, for my practical uses, I'm probably not going to invest the time. I can see that being a tool that eventually I might have to explore because it's real tough to keep a good mount when you're trying to shoot, across a visual barrier coming right to left as a right-handed shooter, for sure.
I think that's where, separating your upper half from your lower half is key, right? So like keeping your upper half consistent, this way you can have a very, consistent mount, and then making your lower half do whatever it needs to do to be able to square up to the target is key.
Yeah.
Right. So like moving right to left, you have to be able to separate the lower half.
Yeah.
This way you can have the exact same mount that you not only want, but need as you're shooting targets.
There's a certain point, depending on the visual barriers. If it's an open target, like an open range, you can move right to left to right. And so long as your hips are swiveling in the direction you want to go, but your upper body is kind of staying as square as possible, your mount will be about the same. But there's a certain point, that point of no return, where like now the target is like so far to your right and you're moving left still, where like now, like I just cannot go far enough and still be square enough. So the mount is going to start changing its structure. You know what I mean? But it's hard to describe. But it's when the target goes so far to the right and you've already moved that point of no return. You know what I mean? And so like I guess you can start reversing your feet, like you start
backing out,
going across your feet or start trailing backwards. But if there's a visual barrier, you may not be able to do that. So again, I'm talking about fairly complex, like things to do with the rifle. But I've been doing some of those. I think for most people, even just doing bar hop right to left, like you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. You're going to drag that crap all the way to the left as you're crossing to the left because your mount is changing and you're not keeping a spot where you want the gun to return and all that stuff. So even just doing bar hop 15 yards, you're going to have if you're going right to left and you're a right-handed shooter, bro, you're going to have so many like bleeds to the left, like Charlie Deltas coming off those targets. Like it's crazy. So
all right. So you bring up a question that I think would be good for people to hear. So you said bar hop at 15 yards.
Yeah.
Why at 15 yards would you do that with a rifle? Like a lot of people, like you see people shoot rifle inside of 10 a lot of the time. I have my own thoughts on this personally. I think it's because it makes them feel really, really good because all they shoot is alphas. But to me, like it's almost like it makes it very difficult to assess your actual performance with the rifle, right? Because a rifle is so much easier to shoot. To me, even at
Is it?
15, it's like, you know, like you should be shooting tennis ball size groups at
Yeah.
15 with a rifle very
Yeah.
aggressively.
So as a rule of thumb, in all my classes, especially when I do pistol rifle class, I pretty much double the distance for all the exercises when I switch from one platform to the other. So if
Hmm.
we do 7 yard work with a pistol, we're probably going to be at 15 yards with a rifle. That's just as a rule of thumb. Most of the time, that's what we're doing. If we do 10 yard drills with a pistol, we're going to do 20 yard drills with a rifle, and so on and so forth. So most of the time, we're doubling.
I like that rule.
Why do I do it farther and not the same distance? Because people are unwilling to be critical about how they're printing inside the A zone.
I agree.
So I was just teaching a pistol class in Indiana, and we were doing, again, my pistol and rifle classes are not all that different, other than the distances are different, and we talk about mount instead of grip. Like there's a few differences, of course, with the different platforms, but as far as like style of training, I mean, we're going to be shooting aggressively at speed. You know what I mean? We're going to shoot uh, accuracy of speed on those classes too. So we're doing drills like 7 yards, 10 yards with a pistol, and I don't necessarily remember which drills, but like let's say we were doing MXAD or something like that, like which is with a 5 and a 15 yard target, and people are like spraying inside the alpha at 5 yards, like, and they're like very happy with the fact that they're all in there, and I'm like, listen, if I'm at a match, right, and I've got that 6 by 11.5, whatever it is, that big rectangle we call the alpha, and I have one at the very right corner, the top, and one at the very left corner, and they're both touching the perforation, I'm gonna look at the arrow, be like, thank you, two alphas, moving on. I don't care, right?
100%.
If I'm at
Yep.
a match, I'm
I
like,
agree.
thank God. I'm a moron, but that's all good. I'll take the 10 points, moving on. If I am in training and I see an alpha like at the top right and at the bottom of the left, I'm like, I'm retarded. Like, I probably shouldn't say this stuff, but what's wrong with my parents,
It's the R
siblings?
word.
Like, what kind of special am I that I can be so far on those prints inside the alpha? Like, to me, you have to be more critical in that. If I'm not looking to shoot the top right corner and the left bottom corner, that should never happen. Now, should there be some deviation when you're shooting at pace, whatever? Sure, of course, there's like mechanical. There's ammo could be bad, pistol could have whatever. Like, yeah, you can have some deviation, but bro, if you're like 11 inches apart and you're inside 10 yards, something's wrong with you. Like you didn't pick a spot,
So,
you're moving the gun, you're doing all sorts of crazy bad things. So in training, you got to get that out. Like you have to be more critical and be like, hey, I didn't look there. Why are those prints there? Does that
so
make sense?
what so what would you say if an instructor told you, "Hey, use the entire alpha"? Like
I don't know
I've
what.
been told this
Yeah.
by instructors that, kind of well known. Like I've heard them say it. I've had them tell me this. Like, nope, I'm going to use the entire alpha. Like
I,
as a training strategy, how do you feel about that?
yeah. Well, I think what they're saying is like they're trying to steal speed, right? And they're like choosing to alpha because I can shoot faster. So I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand why they would say that. Um, that makes no sense to me. If I truly have a spot and my grip supports what my eyes are trying to do, there's no reason for me to use the entire alpha because something gave away. Like it doesn't. I can't shoot any faster than I can see something and grip the gun. Like right. Like how much faster can I shoot? If I give it 2 more inches, then I shoot faster. Like it's not a thing. I don't understand that argument. If I'm looking to a spot, if I'm doing that job and I'm gripping the gun and that's constant, I will shoot as fast as I can shoot at that distance for that size of target. Period. I can't be like, but if I spread my group a little bit more, then I can steal 200s. It's like
Yeah. That's
that
not how
doesn't make
any of
any
it
sense.
works.
Like I don't. That's I
I'm
don't.
with you.
That's not a strategy. That's like,
Yeah.
so if I shoot looser, does that mean like I have to open up my grip or look worse with my eyes in order to get faster speeds? Because that's what we're saying then. It's like I have to let go of my grip or not be attentive with my eyes, and then I'll get a faster split. That doesn't support my training strategies. Like I have to have the same grip and I have to pick a spot, and then I will run the trigger as aggressively as I know I can run it based on my previous training. Again, going to predictive shooting and all that stuff. So using the whole alpha, does that mean that also like you're transitioning, like you slide across the target, you shoot the right side of the alpha and the left side of the alpha, and you're like, yeah, I stole like
I've
a
had
10
people
from that
tell me
transition.
that too, dude.
Yeah,
I look
that's a recipe for
at the
disaster,
leading
man.
edge of the perf. Like I've heard people say this. Um,
Mm-mm.
I do a demo in pretty much all of my classes these days just to show people like okay, I'm going to do one where I look at the entire alpha, and then I'm going to do one demo where I just look to a very, very small spot, right? And I'll take a target, I'll stick it at 5, 7 yards, something like that. And then there's another target directly in back of that one
Oh
at,
yeah,
say, 10, 15 yards,
yeah.
right? Uh, and I'm just showing how, if I just look at the entire alpha on the close target, what does it translate to on the back target, right? And it's
Sloppy,
usually
sloppy
deltas and
toes.
mics. And
Yeah.
and the question is always like, okay, if the back target is the one that I'm actually shooting at, what's the answer then to get better hits? And then people are like, well, slow down. It's like, nope, absolutely not. So like,
How is that
uh,
ever an answer?
right. So like I tape it all up, go back, and I'll shoot it again, and then I look to a really small spot on the front target, get like a golf ball sized group, and then we go back and look at the back target, and it's usually all alpha. And it's like,
Yeah,
no, the answer was the visual piece.
yeah.
The visual piece needs to be way more dialed in. And this is why saying just use the entire alpha, in my opinion, is just hot fucking garbage as a training
Well,
strategy.
I mean,
Like
it's
you have to be
saying,
more critical than that.
yeah, no, it's saying you're giving up your grip or your vision in order to achieve better speed. I think that's a false statement. I think I want
Hmm.
all the grip and all the vision to get all the speed.
Hmm.
And that also supports my accuracy, which is the measures we live by, right? So, no, I don't think that using the whole alpha gives you any more speed. I think using the whole alpha just makes you lazy with your eyes and lazy with your grip. And I think those are both wrong things to practice. Now, like I said, if I'm at a match and I get two alphas and they're freaking as away from
Absolutely.
each other as possible, I'll be like, great, moving on. Like, that's not a
Yep.
conversation because I'm not trying to learn there. Like, okay, maybe I saw that. Maybe I was moving. Maybe like I stepped into something, whatever. Or maybe it's a 25-yard target. I'm like 30-yard target. I'm like, great, I got two alphas. Moving on. Like, but if I'm training, like, no, Like, so anyway, going back to that class, I was telling people, I'm like, you have to be way more critical, like even inside the alpha,
I agree.
to see like, are the rounds going where I'm looking? And so let's say you get like 4 or 5. Let's say on the MX80 you do 6 in the front, 2 in the rear for the traditional version, right? And you have 5 in a really good group, and then the sixth one is like all the way like by itself, all the way to the left, maybe a little low, whatever. That should inform you that you peeled your eyes because you're trying to go to transition to the rear target a little too soon, and you started to print out. Now, if you're getting scored and it's a test, yay, good for you. You got all the points. But from a training perspective, I want to be aware of that as a potential trend of a problem that I have because I'm leaving my eyes too soon. Like, again, I want to be that critical in my training, and I want my people, as they train, to be that critical in their training so that they can pick up the most out of it. Because every time you press the darn thing, 25 and 30 cents are going out, and I'm not a
Hmm.
rich man. So like if I go like 5 perfect apples and one to the left, I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But is there a trend there that I need to be paying attention to? Did I peel off my eyes? Did I loosen my grip in transition? Like, dude, I've done that. Like I'm trying to be aware of all that stuff. Like if I'm loosening my grip at all because I'm moving my shoulders or my my elbows, like I need to pick up on that in training immediately so that I can put a stop to that immediately. I don't have time to wait 3 months until I have a bad habit because then I have to
Hmm.
unlearn something. So yes, the whole alpha is not good enough. Um, because you're giving up something for that. And so for rifle, like if I shoot the same drill at 7 yards, going back full loop, bringing it back like Trump says. What did he say? It's he's got this thing he talks about. Anyway, he talks about how he doesn't talk in
I
circles. He's
remember.
like, I
Yeah.
bring it all the way back, unlike the senile people that, that like lose their train of thought. So bringing it back to that, if I shoot the same drill at 7 yards, people are going to be unwilling to go, oh man, there was like, I shot a bill drill and there's like 5 here and 1 all the way over here. They'll be like, it's 6 alphas. I'll be like, no,
Yep.
no, no, no. Mm-mm. Because if that's at 15 yards, you're going to have 5 alphas and 1 Charlie for sure. And if it's at 25 yards, you're going to have 3 alphas, 2 Charlies, and a dog, right? So like, know what it is that you're looking for. Now, that's not to say that that's a bad build drill at 25 yards, whatever. Like if that's where you're at, that's cool. But I think if you're more critical, you can pay attention and be aware about some tendencies that you have. I call it shooter personality, right? The personality you have under tension, under pressure, under stress. you're likely to shove on the gun or steer the gun or like, do something with your dominant hand, whatever. I want to know immediately. And I think for people, it's easier to pick up on those things because they mostly look at the prints on the target to learn, which is a mistake. At distance, right? At distance, they see the prints, are like, oh yeah, I can see how I pushed on the gun on that. But then inside at 7, when it prints inside the alpha a little low, they don't necessarily pick up on that. Does that make sense? So I think
Oh,
the print
100% it
in that
does.
class
Yes.
helped me teach this, but also going back to the problem, like if you're just looking for prints to teach you something about your shooting, you're missing a whole lot of information as the gun is going off. And if you're training the right way, like you should have a very good idea of what's happening on that target while the gun's going off so that you can learn from it there. Because I don't want, like, the target ought to be some kind of confirmation that I kind of saw the thing happening. And then, like, yeah, I'm learning. Yeah, when I do this, this happens. I see this happening, and it prints like that. Okay, cool. But for you to, like, how do most people train? Boom, 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 put the gun down, look for the target. Oh, what's it look like? Where did my prints go? Like, you're missing so much learning
Or,
because
dude,
you're not aware of what's happening behind the gun.
I actually heard recently, I was at a class. Well, I'm not going to say where because this will give it away, like who said this, but I completely disagree with what this dude was saying. Like this one guy, we were doing transitions and
Keep talking. My laptop is trying to die.
oh, sorry. So we were doing transitions and this one close target at 5 yards, open target. This guy shot one in the lower alpha and then one in the upper alpha. And then another guy came over and he was like, "You didn't wait for your dot to come back down." And I'm like, "No, that has nothing to do with it, right?" He peeled his eyes off of that target before he was done shooting it, right? So like
All
he looked once, pressed twice is what happened. He's
right.
like, no, he's just not waiting for the dot to come back down. It's like, dude, do you consciously wait for the dot to come back down on a 15 split because it's a freaking
It's
open
impossible.
target at 5?
You
Like,
can't
no,
perceive it in
you're
15.
not waiting for the dot to come back down when you're shooting a predictive pair, right?
Hmm.
So like when you mentioned peeling your eyes off, like I fully agree, right? Like if you're seeing, you know, hit here and then hit way up here, it's like you looked once and pressed twice. And the
Yep.
same thing goes for transitions, in my opinion. You look once, press twice, and you start like transitioning off of that target. That's when you see drag-ons and drag-offs. So like, I don't know. I think like I've heard this a lot lately where people are like, yeah, you're just not waiting for the dot to come back down. And that's like, I feel like if you tell a student that, all they're going to do, especially on a close target where they feel tension because they have to go fast, is stare at the freaking dot.
Yeah, because you're trying to bring it back down. It's almost like you're retrieving it, bringing it back to the spot. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a mistake. But you remember this conversation? We had this conversation like a year and a half, 2 years ago, when people were hot about doubles and whatever, and people were like, hammers or double taps or like look once, shoot twice, like all that stuff. And I was like, nah, man, it's like look the whole time and shoot twice. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
lose connection with the spot where you want the bullets to go, the bullets will not go there. It's just what it is. And if they do, it's
Despite your
luck.
grip, you could have the best grip in the world. Look at the alpha. That's probably where it's going to go, all over
And
the
like
entire alpha.
conversely, like if I look to a spot and I have a really crappy grip, I can still make the bullets go there. It just takes a whole lot more time,
Yes.
in my opinion. So if I want to to shoot aggressively, like my grip needs to be constant and it needs to be supporting where my eyes are looking. Like it all supports each other, right? Like my grip supports my eyes. My eyes tell my trigger finger like how sloppy I can be or how careful I
Yes.
need to be, right? Um, and so like not one more important than the other. Like they're all very very important. And people having these hierarchies and whatever. It's like, well, if your grip is this, then you're no. They're all important.
All of
Your
them are.
grip is the
Yep.
thing that just cannot change ever, and that's the problem that let's be honest, every single one of us has. Like, how many times do we pull up to a very difficult target and we loosen up the grip because we don't want to move the gun? But does that really ever help? If you would just keep the grip the way it's supposed to be, the gun is likely to move less if the
Yes.
grip was good. But we don't like the feeling of tension when we're trying to do something delicate or accurate or precise. So that we try to remove tension, but that's the wrong side to remove the tension from. Your
Mm-hmm.
support hand ought to be trying to crush the gun in half while your trigger finger is doing the delicate work, right? On that very far, like 30, you remember the Nationals, that 35-yard like partial that gives people nightmares to this day. Um, so the change in pressure of the grip is not ever supporting anything. Can't think of a single scenario where like if I just soften up my support hand, I'll be more successful.
All right. So this
And you?
is great. Another segue into a question that I already had for you. How do you know if you're gripping the gun properly? Like if someone asked that in a class, like what would be your answer to like for a dude that's trying to figure out, am I gripping the gun properly?
Yeah, and here's the issue. Like I've gone through, like I said, I've gone through all of those classes where they're like, if you grip the gun this way, then it's going to work out for you. Like if you have these specific things on the gun, it's going to be
Yep.
good. And it's like, I understand where their heart comes from. They're trying to help people based on like, this is how I hold the gun, and this is how a lot of successful people hold the gun. So if you try it this way, you might have some luck. Okay, I can buy that. It can help people, but it's not a principle-based learning where like you're
Yeah.
gonna have to dial it in for yourself. That's the real answer. You're gonna have to dial it in
I,
for yourself. Here's your sandbox to play in. I'm
I
gonna give you
hate
some ideas.
I hate that first example so much. It's absolute AIDS to me. But go ahead.
But I understand where it comes from. It's like
Sure.
if I hold the gun this way, and I know 10 super successful shooters that hold the gun very, very similarly, those similarities are worth discussing. Now, for me to tell you you have to do it this way and it'll like do some fairy dust magic, it's probably not true. Like
Well,
it
dude,
might be really good for selling a class, but it's not true.
here's my opinion on those type of conversations. Eric Garfell is a great example of this because he has a very different grip. I think everyone would agree, right? He
Yeah,
puts his
100%.
puts his one finger on the front of the trigger guard, right? And then people get all wrapped up in like, well, Eric does it and he completely crushes it. It's like, dude, do you really believe that's the main reason that he wins like that?
Yeah,
Like I
seriously.
feel like he could teacup the gun
He could have a garden
and
hose with a blow
still
dart and still crush
crush
your ass.
everyone. Like that is not the reason.
But he talks about it. I think he started holding the gun like that when he was a kid because he couldn't hold the gun right or something like that, and
Yeah.
then he got used to it. Like I don't know why he does that. It doesn't matter
No.
because if I forced him, I said, Eric, I need you to hold this gun like the way I hold the gun. He'll still crush my soul. Like I I
Yes.
I almost guarantee it that like how puts his finger, like he may like this more, but he could probably do it the other way just the same. Like there's more to the story than just that because he'll change some input on the gun to make the gun behave the way he wants it to behave.
Mason Lane, another great example. Support hand really low on the gun,
Yeah,
right? And
and
like really
rotate
torque
forward
forward.
and arms pretty much locked out.
Yes.
Which made me remove the whole like, hey man, like you probably shouldn't lock your arms out. I may say something like, for a lot of people, when you're on the move, it doesn't really work all that great when your arms are locked out. But there are several people, including Mason Lane, who can do that and crush. So if
Yes.
that's how you like it and your gun is behaving the way you want it to, have at it. Like so, as I see these anomalies, I'm like, hey, like Frank Proctor, elbows straight down. He looks like he's like practically trying to touch the elbows together. The boy could shoot. Like
Hmm.
it's not like how most people shoot, but there's an anomaly. And so it brings us back to how do we know if somebody's holding the gun right? The gun behaves right. The gun
Yeah.
behavior, how the gun behaves informs you as to whether you have the proper structure and proper pressures around the grip so that the gun can behave the same over and over again. We call that predictability of the gun. So when I teach grip, like I said, I give them a sandbox and I give them some toys to play with.
Yep.
Right? I remove a bunch of stuff that's bad, and then like, okay, these three toys, sandbox, play with this. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for the gun to behave the same between shots in a predictable pattern that you're like, oh, I recognize what that is. It does this over and over again around the spot I'm looking at. This is cool. This working out. Or, hey, man, every time I shoot, the gun goes in a different direction. It comes back a different way. Okay, that grip probably needs more attention. Like maybe you need to change an input, or maybe you need to change like where your hands interact with the gun. I call that the structure behind the gun. And same with the platform on a rifle with the mount. And maybe you need to get a different size grip. Maybe you need to have like swells or whatever. Like
Hmm.
there's stuff that we can change. And for us to say, hey, everybody should be holding the gun the same, I think it's wrong because everybody has different finger shapes, finger hand length, finger length, grip size, like micro pistols versus full size pistols. I have those beautiful lock grips with the swells that help me with my
I
long
love
mongoloid
the
fingers,
I
right?
love
Like
the palm swells.
um,
Yep.
the the texturing on the grip, like all of that stuff matters. If you shoot, I'll go further. If you shoot like a 5-inch gun versus a 3.5-inch gun, if you shoot competition ammo versus super spicy defensive ammo, like the gun is going to behave a little bit differently. And if, so long as you understand the concepts, you can dial it in like that. In progress, while the gun's going off, you can make a change in your inputs, and maybe not where you're touching the gun because you probably grabbed it already the way you want it. But in the next magazine, you could. Like if I grab a student's gun and I don't like the way it feels, I'll shoot a couple rounds like nope, and I'll move my hands to make the gun behave more the way I want it to, and I'll be able to do whatever demos on anybody's gun. You know what I mean?
So
I may
you're
not
saying
like it. I will hate your slippery Glock 17 Gen 3. I'll hate it so much, but I'll still do it. Even with your New York 11-pound trigger or whatever, I'll still. I've told you this story before. I did those like predictive splits, like 15s and 14s on somebody's like nasty 13-pound trigger. I'm like, didn't even know it because they just gave it to me. They're like, hey, can you do it on this? And I'm like, sure. And it's like, how do you do that? That's a 13-pound. And if they had told me beforehand, I probably would have been nervous about that. I probably would have screwed it up, you know?
I did the exact same thing in Delaware. So like we were shooting Accelerator, and this one guy came over and he was like, hey man, like you just did it with a steel frame gun with a beautiful trigger and a big old dot. He's like, so he had a Glock. It was a 40. I don't know all the numbers to Glock because I'm not a Glock guy.
40 caliber.
It was a 40 cal, like the full like G17 size. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know either.
22 maybe.
Glock 21 maybe. I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And it had the big dot sights on it. He's like, can you do it with this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And like in the back of my head, I'm like, I haven't shot irons in probably 5 years. But like, I'm just going to do the thing, right? So like, look at the spots where I want the irons to show up. And to like the front target, I had like an 11 split because I'm not used to like, you know, like Glock triggers, like really push your finger off of the trigger. But yeah, it went super well. And like, he was like, oh, you can't do it. And like, it kind of all came back to like, yeah, dude, like, that's why this is a principle and or concept based idea. This isn't like, hey, just put your hands here. Yeah. Right. If you have like principles and concepts that you go by, like, you know exactly what to do.
Yeah. So back to the sandbox and whatever, like there's some things I removed. Like you cannot not be as high as possible in the back of the gun. That's a widely acceptable thing that helps people with how to manage the pistol because you're that leverage point. Okay. You want to be as high as possible. If you leave a gap, it's not going to be great. Right. But like how far you reach around the grip, bro, that's like so personal. I don't know your grip size. I don't know your finger size. Like for me, like I try not to reach all the way around. Otherwise I'll have like support hand on fingers and I want support hand on gun. So I'll go less. And sometimes depending on how small the grip is, there'll be a slight gap in my dominant hand on the right side.
To move your fingers out of the way.
Panel. So I move them out of the way. Sometimes a gap. I have zero problems managing the gun with a gap on my dominant side. Because that's where I need my fingers to go in order for my support hand that actually manages the gun to be on the grip, not on my fingers, right? So for people to say, like, you have to have this much, they'll say, like, this knuckle under the trigger or this part of your finger under the trigger. I'm like, I don't know. Somewhere on there, like wherever you can, right? Because the principle we're trying not to violate is taking up all the support side panel where your support hand is supposed to go. We want as much of that as possible on your support side. Another thing that I go, try not to violate. Like, actually closing your palms in the back of the gun is a good thing. Like if you're leaving a gap between the two palms, it doesn't, your gun isn't going to behave very well. So like that's pretty widely acceptable. So here's some parameters, like go play, but these things try not to violate and you'll see if it works better. Now, that being said, I'll say this too. If you find like, man, I leave a little bit of a gap and my gun behaves beautifully and I have perfect accuracy and my gun behaves the same, I'm like, dude, great. High five. You figured it out. That's for you. That may be working perfectly. I haven't seen a person that can do that. Usually closing the back of the gun, like, you know, I think Mike Seeklander talks about the nutcracker where you're hinging the gun and then you're like kind of closing your palms together. Tends to work pretty good. Here's another negotiable. People always say like, oh, not always. A lot of people would talk about with their grip, they'll tell them the student that the back strap of the gun needs to be completely taken up by their dominant hand. I don't think that's true. Because then it makes you rotate your hand weird around the gun. I think
or be in line with their arm.
I don't say that either.
Too, like, because Like what happens if you can't reach the trigger? Then they end up moving their hand around.
Exactly. So for me to say like, or it might be very uncomfortable for you to line up your gun that way, or whatever. There's a million, but there is no real traction, especially at the bottom of the backstrap. I don't care if there's a gap there. Just don't leave a gap on the side of the gun where you actually need to be having, like your support side panel needs to be completely full. In fact, hold on. For the people that are watching, all right, for the people that are watching, right? Like the panel, this is what my hand looks like. I am like almost behind the gun with my grip. Like I want to be that in enveloping with the support side. But my dominant side, if I have this, I don't know if you guys can see that. You see how there's a little bit of room at the bottom? I can't turn it any more than that. There'll be like a little bit of room here.
Yep.
Depending on grip size of the grip of the gun, right?
And hands. Yep.
There may be a little gap down there. So for people to say, well, it has to be taken up, I think that's a mistake because it changes how you reach the trigger. It changes how, like, if you're even like, if you can hold the gun properly, like front to back with your dominant side and all that stuff. So that's irrelevant. So like people with small fingers, they may rotate more to reach the trigger and leave a little gap at the bottom of the backstrap. Fine. Your palms can still touch at the top where it matters. Like, like I could still touch there where it matters, like right here, and leave a little gap there. So to have these absolutes, I think is wrong. I think you go, hey man, like these are kind of the non-negotiables, like being high on the backstrap of the gun, kind of closing your palms in the back. Like those work for a lot of people. At least start there, and then you can do whatever you want. And then there's a bunch of negotiables, like how far forward and back you rotate your hands. Like that's going to be both preference and what you're paying attention to. Like as the gun's going off, is it behaving right? If it's behaving erratically and different every single time, there's probably like a pressure problem. There could be a structure problem. Like maybe you need to play around with like maybe moving your hands a little bit. A lot of people have very low left hands. Like they'll be like this low. And for some people, higher is better. But then you have like a Mason Lane who doesn't do that.
Lower. Yeah.
So, but does he like the way his gun behaves? Bro, I've watched him shoot many, many times. 100%. He has no problems with how the gun is behaving. So in a class, how do I know if somebody's being successful? They're paying attention and they're making adjustments based on how the gun is behaving. And so they're like, okay, I have these tools. These things may make it better for me based on what Fabio is telling me. But I also have some ability to explore, right? Like you're in your sandbox, man, go play. Like your goal for you is that your gun behaves the same over and over again. And because of that, you can trust that like, man, I can shoot again. Like it's going to be right there when I need it again. And then it's supported by the eyes. But so the grip is always, grip and eyes, right? It's not just grip. But when we're talking about structure and pressure and all that stuff, it's not a one size fits all for sure. I mean, just the fact that there's, I don't know how many gun sizes, grip sizes, and then hand sizes. It's very personal. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I agree.
It depends.
It definitely does. No, like I think what you're saying is like a principle-based approach. Principles are concepts that you are fully aware of and you know what you're trying to work towards is the way, rather than just like, hey, put your hands here.
Right? Yeah, and the same with the mount too. Like it's the same thing. Like I have some things that I think if you do them, you're more likely to achieve success sooner. And if you don't have anything, like start here, But if you already have a pretty good mount and you can kind of shoot, then I'm going to give you some thoughts. But it's really like, is it behaving in a way that you recognize? Can it do the same thing over and over again at distance, at speed, blah, blah, blah? Because anybody can hold their platform, whether it's pistol or rifle, really crappy and still be accurate.
I agree.
Slow.
All right. So I've got one more question for you before we cut this. So
okay,
it's kind of a gear question.
Oh boy, me and gear.
Well, it's something that I think is important to talk about because a lot of people don't know how to set their rifle up.
Okay.
Specifically for training. And what I mean is like, what stuff do I put on this? In terms of dot, muzzle device, etc., trigger, etc. And I think it's important to talk about because not only do people not know, but I think sometimes a lot of people will just have a box of rifle shit or pistol shit, whatever the case may be, that like they got it and it's like, oh gosh, well, I don't like that. Or like, this really isn't advantageous to the thing that I'm trying to do. And then I just like basically wasting money. Like I throw it in the box.
Or a super cool person uses this, so I should buy it.
Yeah. So like I think these type of conversations are important because at the end of the day, it saves
Sure.
money. It's therefore it adds value to
I
people's
can show
training.
you what I have
Okay.
currently. So obviously I am on Modern Material, Pro Staff, as you.
It's interesting because I have one of those right here as well.
They're absolutely gorgeous. Now, I got this rifle 3 months ago or so. And so I don't like to change a whole bunch of stuff at once. You know this about me. Like I like to run stuff in training for a long time until I go, I like this and it's staying. I don't like this and it's going out. Right. So I know that I like my rifles to have a little bit of a riser on my dots so that I can have a good cheek weld, not too high, not too low. I don't want to lean forward on stuff. So I have a 193.
Okay, 193. All right.
193
Yep.
American Defense Manufacturer. I think that's what they're called.
Yep.
Of course, all of my dots are Holosun because they're my people, and I love this. I especially love the AEMS because of the windows, right? On the front window, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I have a paster.
I do the same. Yeah.
So when I want to shoot occluded, I put it up. When I don't want to shoot occluded, I put it down. It's just a great dot. So those are
side note. Have you seen the like the big ass Ames dot
Yes.
from Holosun, the Ronin one?
Yeah,
I'm 100% getting
mail
the
right
Ronin
now.
one.
Actually,
really?
yeah.
Oh, I need it. All right, I need to
Yeah,
make a phone
that
call.
and
I
the
want that
new-
thing so
the
bad.
new thermal thing. I think those are both coming. I don't know what I'd use it for because I'm not a cool guy, but I'm gonna put it on a rifle and I'll play with it just so that I can speak to it intelligently because that's important to me. So those two pieces, like standard, I'm gonna put that on a rifle anyway. I'm gonna like it anyway because I've been using these things for some time. What else? I used to have probably since the last time we talked about. I used to have those. I don't even know what you call them. Those little
Panels?
like dingy thingies. What?
Oh, the hand stop.
The hand stop, but it had two pieces. One of them was you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I left it on there because it came that way all these months until about a week ago. I tested it. I liked it. Okay. Can I shoot the rifle with it? Yes. Does it actually help me shoot the rifle better? No. I don't think it helps me specifically to shoot the rifle better. I do believe it gets in the way sometimes. I know some of you guys talk about, and I don't do a whole lot of like barricade work, so you guys talk about that. But I have shot off of like a vehicle, like hood or whatever. Like just putting it on anything and having those stops on there get in the way. Yep. More importantly, like if I go from a reload to like trying to get my hand in the forend of the rifle, sometimes it gets in the way. Like I'm trying to slide my hand up there, and it'll bump my hand where like it delays my mount. So I was like, I definitely don't like that. And because it doesn't help me shoot, I took it off. So that just happened maybe a week or so ago. What I did, I don't know if you guys can see these scales. You probably know the name of the brand more than I do because I was
rail
telling
scales.
What are they called?
Rail scales.
Yeah. I really like that. And so how did I come up with that idea? Well,
those are the thicker rail scales.
Yeah, these are
for
like
the people that aren't watching a video.
Pretty darn aggressive. And so far I only have it on the support side, but I may get one to match on the other side because now I have nothing else there, so maybe my fingers can go there. The way I came up with that was I really enjoy my lock grips on my pistol. I like the traction that I get on the grip of the pistol, and I'm like, why doesn't anybody make this? Little did I know, people do make this.
They do.
So I grabbed those. I have one on this side, and then I have a little bit of a on the front end here, which I don't use for my fingers, just hides my cables. I use it for cable management. So as far as that, I have a laser on the rifle that's been on there for a few weeks. I am playing with the idea of using it for teaching purposes. Turn it on just to see how the gun behaves while I'm mounting properly and not properly. Like doing bad demos is good too, because then people can see the difference between one and the other. And I think with a laser, I don't have to describe it as much, and I can just show them like, hey, here's a loose mount, or here's way too much hand tension, or here's how you like steer the gun, blah, 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 blah. And I think with the laser on the target, it'll make things more simple to understand. I've been around education for 20 plus years. Like people need to hear something, see something, experiment with something, like actually do the thing. Agreed. And so I teach most of my classes with those concepts. Like I talk about it, then I demo it so people can see it, and then I let them play with it. Then I give them coaching and feedback so that they can possibly have more points of like oh, I should be paying attention to that. I forgot about that, whatever, that kind of thing. So I think with the laser, it helps me amplify the visual piece. Like, yes, they can watch me do it, they can hear me talk about it, but now they can also watch how the gun is behaving on the target. So that's the concept. I'm not 100% sure yet on this because it's been maybe a week worth of practicing. I got it 2 weeks ago or something like that. What else? Muzzle devices. I have not changed what they gave me. It is a comped. I know you probably hate this, but the gun really doesn't move a whole lot. It's loud as crap, but it really makes the gun just kind of sit there.
So it's a single chamber muzzle device or muzzle brake with 2 holes in the top and then a little bit of a flash hider on the side.
Yeah.
Or in the front, rather.
In the front. And it's pinned.
Yeah, so you can't change it
yet.
Yeah.
I am picking up a can today. Got approved. And that comes with a different muzzle
exciting.
device. Yeah. So I'm gonna go pick up the can. I'm not gonna change it now because I'm teaching a pistol rifle class this weekend. But so I'm gonna use this for a little while longer. Once I figure out, I don't know what the new muzzle device that comes with the can is, but I'm gonna be putting that on to use it with the can for probably the foreseeable future, another couple months. But so I know, and I've heard you talk about this. I've heard Joel talk about. I mean, several people have been talking about like put a 3-prong or something like that. That's like almost on hard mode. I'm into training in hard mode because it makes everything else simpler. But I can also see the benefit of like train with the gear that you like to shoot and be good at it. Like, I like my pistols a certain way. I like the triggers a certain way. I could still shoot somebody else's pistol. I just won't like the way it feels, right? So I can see having like almost like a training setup because I do have a Frankenstein rifle that I made for myself years back, and I can see myself maybe like making that the hard mode, and then this is like the one I like to shoot, just to be able to demo on people's guns and still be proficient and all that stuff. Anyway, so the muzzle device would probably be, for me, for my purposes, will be whatever it needs to be for the cans that I'm going to be using. So it'll be kind of connected to that. So this one's probably going to come off. For now, it's pinned. Everything else on the rifle is pretty much the way it comes. It's got a collapsible stock. I use it all the way out. For a long time, I was using it all the way out and then one in. I don't know why I liked it that way. These days, it's almost like if it would go out one more click, I'd probably like it more. I don't know. The longer it goes, the more I like it. I don't know what it is, but definitely feel like, is that you?
That's what she said. Sorry. Like, I'm a child and I can't let that
go.
go.
The longer it is, the better for everybody, right? So I don't know. I like the stock all the way out. Trigger. Man, I have shot some beautiful, gorgeous, like feeling triggers on rifles, and I've shot some like lesser quality triggers. I'm gonna be real honest. Like on rifle, I don't care half as much as on pistol. On pistol, I'm a snob, and I'm like, I want the trigger to be this way, and I want it to break here, and I want it to be a glass break, and I want it to be more forward, and blah 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 blah. And like, I designed my own trigger for Beretta just because I was like, this is not good enough. So Ben and I went and designed it. By the way, just released. Badass.
I saw that. Super cool.
Just released this beauty, and it really truly breaks like 90 degrees, very little travel. I love it. On rifle, I'm be real honest, like I really don't care. I've shot some like what people would consider really bad triggers and some people consider really nice triggers. I can pretty much get the same results on all of those things. It doesn't really mess with my accuracy. It doesn't really mess with my splits. Like on rifle, I don't care nearly as much. Now, whatever came with this rifle is amazing. It's great.
That's a hyperfire trigger.
Hyperfire trigger.
Hyperfire. Yeah.
Is that good?
It's very good. Yeah, it breaks at, I don't know, maybe 3.5, 4 pounds. It's nice.
It is nice, and it doesn't feel too light. It definitely has a wall per se. Like I feel like I have something if I wanted to stop on it. But I normally prefer flat face. So eventually, once like I play this with it a little while, maybe I'll go to a flat face some cut. But just 100% a preference and a feel on the finger instead of like this is gonna buy me performance or whatever. Honestly, like if it's a half decent rifle, I'm gonna shoot it pretty much the same. That's where I'm at these days. Like if you give me a half decent rifle, it's probably gonna do. I may not like it the way like anything else. Like I've shot, I taught a rifle class just last month, 6 weeks ago or something like that, and I shot a couple of different rifles. People really were proud of their rifles, because I have this, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's so badass, modern material, blah blah blah." I'm like, "I know, right? It's amazing." So they got to shoot this one, and they had me shoot theirs, and I'm like, man, I'm, it's okay. It's fine. I prefer
It
mine.
goes
Why?
bang.
'Cause I shoot it the most. Like, but other than that, there wasn't anything like, oh, this is so much better,
Yeah.
or so much worse. On pistols, I feel like there is more variance. Correct
Yep.
me, if you don't feel that way, but I feel like on pistol, you're like, that's trash, and it makes me want to vomit. And mostly, like on rifles, maybe I haven't shot really, really bad ones, but I'm like, yeah, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, go shoot it, go get better. I don't know. How do you feel about rifles? For me, like, if it's acceptable, like, I'm gonna get a jump. This one is certainly better than most of the ones that I've shot, but I don't feel like I couldn't do like half the work, on the other ones. So anyway,
Well,
any other questions on the gear?
so I think rifles in terms of how they're gassed, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's what makes the big difference, right? Like I've shot some like Daniel Defense, a
Yep.
prime example.
Yep.
Like you pick up a DD, that thing is going to be overgassed,
Yep.
and it's overgassed because they don't want people complaining that it
They
doesn't
just want it
run
to work
freaking
every
steel
time.
case, right?
Yep.
Yes. So it's overgassed and it beats you up. A properly gassed gun is definitely way more polite to shoot, and it's way uh I guess easier, you could call, like, it's way easier to shoot.
And that's what I refer to. Like, I don't like it when I go, hey, I'll shoot your gun. It's fine. I can
Hmm.
do the work. I just don't like the way it feels. That's that feeling, like
Yes.
from the overgassing. Like these are like properly gassed, but they'll also run anything. I've put all sorts of different ammo in that thing. It works. Just eats it up.
Yes.
But
Properly gassed and properly the parts properly made up. So
mhm.
like there's no there's no tolerant stacking.
Mm.
So where that comes into play is like where people do stuff like, hey, I built my own rifle in my
Yeah.
garage, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that might be okay for like, a range session where you shoot 100, 200 rounds.
Yep.
You come to a class where you shoot 500 rounds a day with that thing, where it gets hot and then cools down and then gets hot and then you're running it fast. Like it's probably going to break. I see rifles break almost every single class that we do rifle stuff in. Every single class I see something break. So like,
Darn.
you know, parts that are meant to fit up with certain parts, like I think that's key. These mod mat guns, definitely a good example of parts that are meant to mate up with each other, right?
Yeah.
Hodge guns, same exact thing. There's a list of really really good guns that I tend to trust. The mod mat guns, the Hodge guns. Recently shot an ADM. Like you can tell that ADM was very very well put together. There's some thought behind it. It was also properly gassed. But the thing is, like, you're going to pay a little bit more for the stuff that
Sure.
is properly put together and
Yeah,
properly
that makes
gassed.
perfect sense. Yeah.
Unless, like these, that's why part of the reason I dig these mod mat guns so much. You know, this gun is $1,600. It's properly gassed,
I know.
and it's properly put together. It's going to come with an Radian charging handle. It's going to come with a Radian ambi safety that you can put on 45 degrees, which I really like. There's a lot of things about these guns that it's like, man, this is a lot of bang for your buck. And I think the Hodge guns and the ADM guns are pretty much the exact same in terms of value. In terms of the setup that I like, show you. So I go with a three-prong flash hider. We'll start from the front to the back. Three-prong flash hider. I like the three prongs just because, you know, you can put on a muzzle device on a rifle that basically deletes recoil, and in my opinion, you don't get much or as much out of the training, right? Because you can cheat with a muzzle brake, right? The gun just basically goes bang, you feel it cycle, and it's like, all right. Um, it's just kind of easy mode. Now, like if I'm gonna go do like three guns, something like that, like yeah, for sure, give me the muzzle brake. But three prong or a four prong is typically what I gravitate towards. I like the sling mounted at the closest parts of the receiver, kind
Yeah.
of like exactly how you got there. So like right in front of the red dot is where I have one of the attachment points, and then right at the back of the receiver is where I have
Yep.
the other attachment point. Parker Mount Machine Magwell, Parker Mount
Same.
Machine BCD lever, because I dig those things. It makes reloads way faster. And then That's pretty much it, man. The red dot is a SIG 4T. I like the 4T quite a bit because I can change reticles. I have found that using the BDC reticle with a magnifier behind it is really, really advantageous, especially out to like 400 yards. Like I was messing with this the other day. At 400 yards, the third dot down is like spot on.
Hmm.
Um, Now, can I see that without the magnifier? Yeah, maybe, but it's way easier with like
For
a
sure.
3x magnifier. So
Yeah.
like it really, you know, it really strengthens the capability, if you will, of the gun. So I think, 3x magnifier with this dot specifically, where I can change it to the BDC reticle, is very, very good. It just adds to the capability of this thing. Like it makes it a 400 yard and in gun with decent ammo. But yeah, that's about it, man. I like running the stock all the way out, just like you do, and yeah, like a lot of my rifles look the exact same. I do have an NGAL on this because
Because you're fancy.
I'm a night vision nerd and I like to kill stuff at night with the gun. So
Yeah, man, this mod mat, like, I think that's the Ace one I have. I think you have the
Mhm.
Patrol one or
I have
whatever.
the patrol. Yep.
Um, it just comes with everything you want. And so you were talking about saving money. Like, you can build your own Frankenstein and you can try to make
Hmm.
sure that the parts kind of work together. And you might save yourself like a few $100. I don't know. You can probably build a rifle under $1,000, but it's gonna be cheap, man. It's not. You're going to replace parts, and you're going to be like, this is not quite right, and then eventually you spend just as much money, and it won't work just perfectly. Like this one,
No.
I think the Ace one, I think it's maybe $1,900 or something like that,
Yep.
and it's just done. You have to do nothing. Like put a dot on it and go have a good time. Like it'll
Hmm.
run all of the ammo. It shoots plenty soft. And then if you want to play, with your muzzle device or whatever, like go play with your muzzle device. I didn't do anything to that gun. It's just
Hmm.
the way it came. I did get a magwell because they're cool and they're nice to me, and they even painted it the same color as the rifle, which is badass. So
So two things I like about the magwell. Obviously, it enhances like how fast I can do a reload. The other thing that I like is when I have the rifle slung and the
hmm
bolt is open, that magwell kind of fences off the
yep.
BCD lever.
So it
Or
doesn't
if I
drop it.
don't have a BCD lever, it fences off um the bolt release. And so like it's not going to drop the bolt if it's slung
Yeah, I
because
mean it's
it's
pretty
not smacking kit
pronounced.
or
Like this
anything.
is the one it comes with.
Yep.
That I didn't enhance any of this. This is just came with it.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, having a little bit of extra depth there on the magwell does keep it from dropping the
Hmm.
bolt when I don't want it to. So it's super rare that they'll move on me. So it does help with that a bunch. Look at this gorgeous thing. Look at this. Look
Love
at
it.
that.
So
Yeah.
I think the common theme here, like I like how yours is set up. It's very similar to the way I would go about setting one up. Like I just want it to be slick. I want a rifle with a dot. I don't want, an optic that's 3 inches high
Yeah, I mean
because
it's bad.
cheek
Like
weld matters.
we didn't talk about that, but like that's definitely something that needs to be said. Like people that have those super high risers so that they don't have to put their head down at all or whatever. Like I understand what you're saying, but you are losing a very important point of contact with the gun in your cheek weld.
Kind of
It
like
is,
this.
yeah, man. I mean, it might look cool guy stuff, and maybe your favorite like YouTube personality has it, and like they don't, like, sure, they can bring the gun up and like they don't have to put their head like on the gun at all. But that's bad. That's not
Yes.
good. I'm watching people like with the cheek like your stock is like bouncing off your cheek, coming off, or bouncing off your shoulder and your cheek. Like you have a very poor mount, and we need to talk about that. And that is gear related because you chose a poor piece of
It's
gear
hard
based
mode.
on somebody saying that. But it is very important. So for me, that 193 with the AMS, it just works. Like I just
Hmm.
shrug a little bit, like the gun comes into my cheek and it locks in there. I like to have a pretty good amount of pressure on there.
Hmm.
Like I'm not just like it's not my pillow and I'm not just like putting my face on it. I have pressure on it.
Yes.
And I think people don't do that enough, or they have the wrong piece of gear and they're like trying really hard to get down there, but they can't because the dot is high, or the dot is so low that they're like literally like sleeping on their rifle stock to like so there is some pieces of gear that make it simpler. And I think that 193, I haven't seen anybody that it doesn't work for. I mean, I know that people were all
it's a
different
good
shapes
height.
and sizes. It's a good middle ground
Yep.
thing where it works for
Agreed.
most people. I've taught. I usually have women in my classes too, and I've taught from like small women to like big, huge, like 6'6" dudes, and it just kind of works for a whole lot of people. So dial in your gear like that. I think that's probably a worthwhile investment. And that American Defense one, like it's a solid piece. Like it just snaps on there, like it doesn't move. I accidentally, the last class I was teaching, I accidentally like dislodged the lever. I don't know how I did that while I was moving around the range or whatever. So I'm in the middle of shooting a demo, boom, 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 the whole thing flies off. I was like, what the crap? Did I break something? Like,
Mhm.
I was a little concerned that I broke something on the rifle. And I just picked it up. I was like, oh, I guess I moved it. Put it back in the same spot, locked it back, continued the demo.
Oh yeah.
Zero shift, no problem. It's
The,
exactly where it was. Nothing happened to the dot. Nothing happened to
the
the mount.
the ADM mounts are great, man. Like you could take that thing off, spike it on the ground, put it back on the gun,
I
and,
mean,
and
it
it's
flew
gonna be
off.
fine.
Like that's obviously it's not like a pistol where like it cycles the slide and like launches it at you, but it just kind of fell off. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. Right in the middle of the thing, I'm like, am I gonna have to zero it in? I just latched it back on. Actually, closed it correctly. I haven't touched it since. Like it's
Mhm.
perfect. So get good gear, man. Like you can get a little cheaper on your dot, you can get a little cheaper on your mount, and then eventually be like, oh, cool. Now I have to go get the real one.
Yeah,
Because I cheaped out the first time.
I think the common theme here, what you're saying, and like what I definitely would say and agree with is like keep it simple, right? Like man, I had this poor guy show up to a class a couple weeks ago, and gosh, if he listens to this, he's gonna be like, "Oh God, that was me." Not
That's
so
okay.
like not. I'm not making fun, but like he came up and he had this Hydra mount, this GBRS mount, right? So it's like super freaking high. Then he has like a laser hanging off the front of it, right? And then just in front of that, he's got a foregrip that's backwards. And then there's like goon tape all over the rail because he's like taping, cables and shit
But
on
did
this
it look
thing.
cool?
Dude, it looked cool as fuck. Um, and then, a muzzle brake on it. It's just like all of this stuff. The stock completely closed and collapsed
Oh,
in.
wow.
And I was like, dude, does any of that shit get in the way? And he's like, I don't think so. And then like at the end of the class, he came up to me and I'm like, hey, where's all the stuff? And he's like, dude, I took all that crap off. He's
That's
like,
right.
it is completely
That's
getting in
right.
the way. I'm like, yes, like try to keep it as simple as possible.
I mean, honestly, like if you look at my rifle 3 months ago when I got it, and now there's something missing. Like I took something off. I did add the laser because I want, but it's like not an expensive laser. I did not go get the laser that's gonna like enable me to be like the boogeyman, in another country. Like it's just very like it's not that. It's like super simple. I was like, hey bro, I need the simplest thing you got. And he's like, no problem, fam. So Holliston, of course, are the best. And he sent me that thing. I'm like, great, this will do what I
Yep.
needed to do. You know what I mean? So simple is for sure the way to go. Less is definitely more. Like even on my pistols, like people like the huge dots or whatever. They'll I have the 507 comp. It's a beautiful dot. It's big. It's a
Yep.
big window. I still use the EPS most of the time.
That's a great
It's a
dot too.
little bit less window. I don't know. I'm not looking at it. People that always they talk about like the shape of the window, the thickness of the casing, the size of the window. I'm like, are you looking at it that much?
Yes,
What?
they are.
Stop looking
Yes.
at your gun. Like you ought to be looking very far away from your gun. And there should be some color somewhere in front of you that you sometimes choose to like, you know, make more stable. But most of the time, it's just a color. It's like a thing that's moving constantly if you're shooting correctly. People that are like, I like the shape of this dot. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they'll be like, oh, this dot is crisp. And I'm like, why is your dot ever not moving? Like, you're slow. What are you doing? Like, there's no
Yes.
reason for
I
your
agree.
dot to look like a dot. 90% of the time, your dot should not look like a dot.
Hmm.
It should be a color. It should be a streak. It should be some kind of floating thing, whatever you want to call it. But if it looks like a perfect circle, what are you shooting? Like 50-yard shots? Like what do you? Anyway, so people there they get this dot is more crisp. I'm like,
Usually those people are shooting B8s.
Maybe.
I
Yeah.
joke. Don't send me hate mail.
But or,
Sort
or
of.
like, but as far as like that's an enclosed. So I went to hang on nationals and it was raining again. It seems like every time I go to nationals, it's like bad weather. Maybe I should stop going. It was raining. I hang on nationals. I was shooting limited optics with that gun, aluminum gun. Like I have a $900 gun, and everybody else is running like $4,000 2011. Um, I was using that dot. It's great. Like I didn't even have to. Wasn't worried about it breaking. I wasn't worried about the glass being full of water. And everybody else was like freaking out, trying to cover it, trying to people breaking stuff mid match. And I'm like, keep it simple, man. Like get a dot that works. And I carry that defensively for me.
Yep.
I compete with it IDPA, compete with it NLO also. I do protection gigs. That's the setup. I only have that setup. That pistol is what I do 90% of everything. The only thing that changes is on the actual carry one, this is flush. And this magwell is smaller. This is just a little bit too big for me to put. I mean, can I carry that? Yes.
For sure.
But most of the time I was a little bit smaller magwell and then a flush barrel. That's it. Like everything else, same trigger, same dot, same weight of gun, same grip, same.
Yep.
Just keep it the same and just go do work. Like people are concerned with gear more than they should. But I do agree 100% with you. If you're going to buy gear, try to avoid buying like a fad or try to avoid buying something that's not that you're gonna have to replace in like 6. Like people come to a dot class and they have the really trashy dots, and I'm like, dude, you're not gonna make it to lunchtime. They're like, no way, it'll be great. And then it's like 11 o'clock, and they're like, oh, does anybody have a Glock 19 with an RMR or like a 507C or something like that? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure somebody will give you their spare gun because you decided your $150 dot was the way to go. It's like now you're gonna have to spend $300 to get the right one, but you already spent 150. Anyway.
That's this. Well, this is you're saying exactly why I think sometimes gear talks are very good.
Yeah, no, I agree,
It
and
helps
it's
people save
important.
money at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, no,
So,
I think when it's from that perspective of like, hey, this gear actually works. This gear is tested and it does a good job, and you won't have to replace it for a long time for sure.
mhm.
You cut the curve for people. You're like, you don't have to go get 6,000 holsters and like all these dots and all these mounts and all these whatever. Totally like shorten that, but there's also people on the other end of that where they're just like shilling every little piece of use this code, and I hate codes. I'm done with codes, bro.
Me too.
I get hit all the time. Hey, nope, no codes. Well, how are we gonna know that you're helping move product? I'm like, I don't know. Either like me or you don't. I mean, I'm done. I'm done. People are like, this is gonna be bad. It's gonna murder me in the business. But I'm done with these darn codes, man. Like,
Yeah,
if somebody
the
wants a code because they want to save a few bucks and I have one, I'll give it to them for sure. But
mhm.
for me to like bash everybody I know on social media, my friends, my people that support me with like code, smash, code, use my code. Dude, I'm done. I'm done with
I
that.
agree.
I think it's just making everybody tired of if I like something, I just like something. I like that rifle. Go get one. Can you get a discount for me? Yes. There's probably a link somewhere you can get a discount. But truthfully, just go buy more mod mat. Make them some money and use a good rifle. Period. Done. Holosun. Same. No code. Done.
Yeah, I mean, I have codes as
Mad.
well. Like, but where I put them is on my Facebook alumni page. So, like,
Yeah.
if you've been to one of my classes,
Go get
there's
it.
a big ass thing or big ass list full of codes that you can go use. But like, dude, I am not putting a code in every single Instagram post.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
people do that, and I see it, and I'm like, you're just.
The truth is,
I won't go
if
down that
you
road. I
truly
think it's
enjoy,
gross, right?
yeah.
Because you're
If
just telling people
this
buy
is
this,
why I'm
buy this,
telling
buy this, and it's
all
like,
of my partners,
no,
all of
dude.
my
I want my brand to be good training. I don't
yes.
want my brand to be like, you should buy all of this shit.
No, and I'm telling all my partners, all my whatever, I have wonderful people that I work with. I'm very, very blessed. I tell them if you're invested in me because you think I can have something like good to say, or like I have a good audience, or I'm a good person, then that's it. That's the relationship. You like me, I like you. Then when I do like your product, if I do like your product, I'll just talk about it because I do. It's like genuine. I like that rifle, not because
Yeah.
they will pay me, because I like that rifle. I like Holosun. Again, not because they will do cool things for me, but because I truly like their product. I like their
Yeah, me
customer
too.
service. I like my Berettas. I like my howitzer stuff. Like, anyway, so this whole like I have to put a code on it, everything. It just makes people tired, and I think people go, you lose credibility. It's like, are you talking about it because you want to make $3, or are you talking about it because you truly like the product? So when we're talking about this gear and we're talking about that rifle, like, yo, if you're listening to this,
It's the
Mod
shit
Matt ain't
that
gonna
we
send me
actually
a check.
like.
I didn't even give you a code. I just like that rifle. Go get your rifle. If you want a discount, there is a discount, but I'm not trying to like get rich off of somebody's affiliate link. Blah. I just like that product, just like everything else I use, and I will not use stuff that is like forceful. Like, you need to make this many posts with this many codes. I'm done with all that. Like,
Yes.
I don't need more logos in the back of my jersey. In fact, this next year I'm probably going to take a few off and just have just a couple. That's it. I
Dude,
don't know why I went there, but I just got real angry because it's been like that for the last like I don't know 3 to 6 months. It's been like, hey, will you do this? Hey, will you do? I'm like, no. If I like your stuff, I will. I'm already talking about it. That's it. Like, I love my howitzer pants, my shirts. Like, I talk about it. I wear it. That's just genuine. I don't have to force it. I don't have to put a coat on. But man, like these other companies. Anyway,
I
I don't
know.
know why we went there. But I just got a little bit.
Yeah, dude, the whole jersey thing, right before Nationals, Eric from Howitzer was like, "Hey, do you want me to make you a jersey?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm not really a jersey guy. Like, I appreciate it, but, um, you know, if I did have a jersey, it would be in the form of like maybe a wife beater, like tank top. That's it's like Howitzer or something. That's more
He
my
can make that
speed, man.
happen. He can make.
Yeah,
Although I will say those freaking jerseys are cool. Like, he's
they
changed
are.
the game. Those jerseys are way cool. Like, I'll be
I
honest.
know. I got
Florida
one because
jersey is pretty freaking cool.
it
It
had
was
tiger
not wrong.
stripe camo. I'm like,
Yeah.
yep,
I saw you
I'm
wearing
in.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in.
My Beretta jersey this year, legit. I think it's cool. Previous years,
Yeah.
I'll wear it, but like, but I think Howitzer is just changing the game. Like, his stuff, he's got good eyes for what looks cool, and he's got a good vision for trying to make the sport cooler.
I I love all the howitzer stuff, man,
Yeah,
and it's a really good cause as well.
yeah.
Eric is a very giving guy. I did a class recently for a bunch of U.S. Marshals. There was a U.S. Marshal recently killed back in April. The guy had been to, I don't know, 7 or 8 of my classes.
Darn.
So we did a class to benefit basically his family, and like Eric, very, very generous. The stuff that he did for that family.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I dig Howitzer a lot, man.
he's done great things for all of us, like on and around the team or whatever, but also like all this military, like law enforcement, like all the Blue Lions, Project Blue Lion stuff. And
Yep.
anyway, so but like his jerseys and stuff, they showed up for Area 4 here a few weeks ago. I mean, some of those jerseys were like really freaking cool, like
They're
just
cool.
cool designs, like just looking streamlined and not dorky. Like a lot of the other stuff is just like nerd. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? There's just so it's
It's like
busy
you're
and
on a fucking bowling team.
yeah, yeah, exactly right. And you have like, there's no way you have like 17 sponsors, bro. Like,
No.
you're just putting everybody's name of logos, or something. It's weird. I don't like that whole thing. So
Mhm.
even the ones that I have, and all of mine actually do stuff, which is cool. But I might even cut it down a little bit. It's just nerdy. It looks weird, and it's like there's no way that those are all really like productive relationships. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
I agree.
anyway, but before we go, we do have a class.
Yes, we
Never talk
should
about our
we should
freaking classes.
we should plug
Uh,
our class.
yeah, well, first of all, we teach quite a few classes together. We've done pistol rifle. We're doing a performance pistol class.
How many
We're
slots are left in that the one in Tucson? Because that's in 2 weeks. When this drops, there will be 1 week left to sign up, and I
not
think
much,
there's
maybe a couple spots.
maybe, yeah, 2 spots left. It's
Yeah,
almost full. So
yeah.
if you want to
So,
get in and you're in and around Tucson, like, you should probably sign up.
and that one's on my website. Yeah, and then we were playing around with the idea of doing like a competition class, possibly in Florida. That may, or we might change the location of that, but
I
but
think that
definitely.
one's going to end up being in North Carolina. It'll be a 1 day pistol and a 1 day rifle class. So I need to change that on my
We might do a
website, but
movement. Were we not going to do a movement too attached to that, maybe? Anyway, we'll figure
that's
this out.
what we were doing in California.
Oh, badass. Oh, okay. See,
Remember
okay. So
that?
we got a bunch of stuff together. I don't know,
I
but
still need to put that one on my website because that was like next year at some point.
if
I
we're
have, dude, I'm 40, so like I
hey,
have
we're
like
not
a
talking about
calendar with
numbers,
everything
man.
written down.
I'm about to be a different age here in I don't know 2 weeks. It's not good. This is how bad it is. I had to ask Siri how old I am based on my birthday because I didn't know if it was last year's birthday or this year's birthday. That number. I'm not even gonna say the number. That's how bad it is. I'm not even gonna say the number. I looked at my wife and I'm like, hey, am I this or that? She goes, I don't know. I was like, this hurts. Like I have to ask
Yeah,
Siri how old I am because I can't tell. So anyway, classes they're either on my website or Nick's website. I obviously love training people with you because then we always attach some training for ourselves, which is like
sure.
totally self-serving. But find a partner, find somebody that like you can trust to train with and get after it, you guys. I mean, I have some dudes in California that like pretty much came to me knowing very little about guns a few years ago. They are now complete savages, just animals. I'm super proud of those guys. And it's because they listened to the information you got on this podcast. And then they went and found partners that like had similar mindset about training, very principle based, very like we accuracy of speed is a thing, like pressure is a thing, tension, like work it out, all that stuff. Dry fire is a thing. Very much same mindset. And they started training together. And every time I see these guys, they're just like
They
next
shred.
level, next level,
I,
next level,
I
you know?
I need to have both of those guys on the podcast. I think it'd be really fun.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I already know what they're gonna talk about because they're smart, right? They're gonna be very much on the same page about this like dry fire thing and training and paying attention and like looking at problems even when it prints well. We talk about it in class. It can print well, but if you didn't intend for the rounds to go there,
yeah,
yeah, like you definitely saw a delta, but it's not on that target. What's going on? You know what I
yeah.
mean? Come on. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, there's some good dudes coming out of California. I know that that's like a state behind enemy lines, but there's some good dudes coming out of there.
Yeah, those dudes do what they want anyway.
I know,
So,
right? I mean, I'll be there this weekend. I'm teaching a pistol rifle in Cali, and then I'll be with you in Tucson in 2 weeks. And then you're doing what are you doing next? What's your next month look like?
dude, it is bananas. So I begin the month. I will be in South Carolina with Joel. So it's a joint class with Joel
That's
Clark and
November.
I.
After that,
Yeah,
after our
that
class.
yep. That one's in November, like beginning in November. That is a pistol rifle. I think there's one spot left in that class. Um, that one is right near Charleston, South Carolina. Super cool range. That's going to be a awesome freaking time. After that, I will be in PA, and then I totally forgot. I'm blanking. Like I travel so much, like I'm
Yeah,
like I have no
yeah,
idea where I'm at sometimes.
yeah. But I mean,
But
all that stuff is posted so people can find
But
it.
yeah, www.veloxtraininggroup.com. I will also put the link to my website and Fabio's website in the description here. So this was good, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh
I
man, my
think this is a
pleasure.
good
It's
chat.
always fun
Hopefully, it
talking
helps people
training with
out.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
I mean, this is what we do.
All right. Till next time.
Later.